All right, good evening, we've got everybody here. Good evening and welcome to the Lincoln County Courthouse. This meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin in a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it will be available at any time at lincolncountysd.org. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name and address and speak into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll first do roll call. Commissioner Sweeter?
Here.
Commissioner Jungling? Here. Commissioner Boots?
Here.
Commissioner Green?
Here.
Commissioner Scott is also here. We'll now approve the meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, Mr. Brown? No. Does anybody else have any corrections?
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes. Boots.
Second, Green?
Okay, we've got a motion and it's been properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we'll move on to approve the meeting agenda. Any changes, Mr. Brown? Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make motion, Jungling.
Second, Sweeter.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is any public comment on non-agenda items. Based on attendance, it doesn't appear that there's going to be anybody that wants to speak on that. So we're just going to move to our first and only agenda item. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning Department. This first item for this evening is an application for a conditional use permit for motor vehicle sales. Subject property is at 27050 Sunset Boulevard. This property is approximately 600 feet to the west of city limits of the city of T. Subject property is zoned I-1 Light Industrial. As you can see, all adjacent properties are zoned I-1 Light Industrial as well. Subject property is developed with a 15,000 square foot building. That 15,000 square foot building was approved in 2017 as a contractor shop. Specifically, there's 6 units within that structure for contractor shop as the use. Pictures shown on the screen. The one looking directly to the east would be the one looking onto the property. As you can see, there really is no outside storage or any types of complaints or issues that staff identified on this particular property. So the applicant did submit this application to do motor vehicle sales out of unit number 1. The petitioner, the applicant, did receive a conditional use permit from the county in 2021 to sell motor vehicles out of unit number 4 in the building. And so up until that point in time, the applicant has been in compliance with all the conditions with that conditional use permit. So staff did review this application, did have some discussions with the applicant. What's unique about this particular application is that the Planning Commission did put a specific condition on the existing unit number 4, which was that no vehicles would be for sale would be displayed out front of the structure. So staff does feel that that condition was applicable for this conditional use permit for this unit number 1 as well. So staff did review this application, did look at the site plan that the applicant did submit with the application. We did identify that there is sufficient parking for this type of a use. The applicant does have sufficient parking outside of unit number 1, as well as additional spots on the property, which the landowner did sign a letter that was supplied to the county office that allows for shared parking on the site. So typically what we've had in the past with these, a concern of staff would be that there wasn't sufficient parking. This particular application, the requirements for parking are met, so staff doesn't have any real concerns with that. So staff does recommend approval of this application. We don't feel that it's going to specifically change the character of the general of the area. Do feel that as condition, and specifically with that condition, that no vehicles for sale shall be displayed out front, should address most of the concerns that occur with these types of uses. So staff does recommend approval of this application with the 8 conditions that were listed in the staff analysis. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Green.
This might be splitting hairs, but based on the site plan, there are, it looks like 3 parking spots out front and potentially 4 on the left-hand side based on me looking at this. When you say no vehicles for sale out front, are we meaning all outdoor parking spots?
Yes.
Okay.
So specifically, the parking requirement would be just for typical use for that side. But with that condition, he can't have any of those outside.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, I'll ask the applicant to come forward now and tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
Ron Peterson, 27050 Sunset Boulevard in T. Really nothing in addition to what Toby said. I've been operating out of there and no issues. My vehicle's kept indoors. It's mainly classic sales, so I don't have cars up front with window tags saying they're for sale and price tags. It just doesn't happen. Liability, risk of damage, all of those things, they stay locked up inside. So that's my business, is kind of like a mouse in the corner of a church. I'm there and nobody really knows it, so.
All right, any questions for the applicant?
I'll start.
Mr. Green?
Okay, Mr. Chair. So on average, how many vehicles would you say you would probably sell out of a space like this?
Monthly,
Sure.
it varies, I would say on average, the course of a year, between 6 and 10.
Okay.
Yep, nothing, I have virtually zero traffic. 1 out of every 30 sales, I might meet my customer, literally.
Right.
It's
Understand.
all internet.
Assuming it's all online and,
It's online, internet, phone, but most of my vehicles leave the state. So,
Do
yeah,
you
it's,
work on the vehicles in the?
all I do is clean them. All my service work goes to Lennox.
Oh.
Yep, I don't do any repairs mechanically. I might put a battery in one, but other than that, no, that's it.
And then the obligatory 8 conditions, you're good with all 8 conditions that?
Yep, I went through them last time I was here, a couple years ago, and, yeah, the reason why we put the no displaying, because I don't leave them outside for sale. I might park one out, take pictures, but it goes back inside, so, yeah,
Thanks, Ron.
you bet.
any other questions? Mr. Boots?
Nope, I think that kind of covered it.
The only question I have, just out of curiosity, reason for moving from unit 4 to 1?
Bigger unit.
Yeah, just more. square
Much
footage.
nicer office.
Yeah.
It is the park place of monopoly in this building. All the other buildings, units are small.
Got it.
This one, the contractor built the building. He's been in there since the day it was built. He just moved out. They gave me first shot at it.
Got
So
it.
a lot better setup.
Just nicer place. Yep,
Much better. Yeah.
very good. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Even though there's, we'll go through the process, I guess. Anyone else want to speak in favor of the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the floor to that and ask if anybody wants to speak in opposition. Seeing none, we'll close the floor for public comment and entertain a motion, and then we can have discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the 8 conditions listed.
Second, Boots.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Does anybody have any comments?
You know,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
so yeah, typically, we've had some bad experiences with businesses like this and in areas like this. And we've been cleaning it up and doing a good job with that. Also, I've been in this business looking at cars before, and they do everything, and just like you said, everything's clean. There's nothing going on there. Everything is very, very good, clean in that unit number 4. So I'll probably move to approve on this one.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, I'm just gonna reiterate on what Commissioner Jungling said. I mean, we've had a couple of these deals, and they were more outside display car sales, and I still tonight don't believe that that's a fit in these types of buildings, but what this gentleman's doing, I guess I sure think it's a fit, and, you know, we also talk a lot about, when we approve these, that they can follow the property, and as long as there's the condition that, condition number 6, I guess that, you know, the next person that comes along is gonna have to abide by that too, so because of that, I will be in favor of it. Okay, seeing none, we will call the roll. Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott is also a yes. Thanks for coming down. Yeah, I know.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to old business. Any old business, Mr. Brown? No? Okay, we'll move on to new business. Any updates?
Yeah, I just got a couple things for you. So the first is, what the plan is that next month, I believe we meet on February 20th because of the holiday. And so I'm going to be requesting that the Board of Commissioners have a joint meeting with us. So I just want to verify that that's going to work for you guys. So typically what we do is we start at like 5 o'clock on that night.
Which date?
I think it's the 20th, if I'm correct on that.
Okay.
Because the 19th is a holiday, so it'll be the 20th. It'll be a Tuesday. But we typically would start at 5 o'clock and then transition into our meeting. And so really, the agenda for that meeting would be two things. Is we do the annual report, just kind of update on permits and different types of applications. And then the second part of that, which is kind of relevant, is we want to talk about two specific areas of the comprehensive plan. The first one would be the draft future land use map, which I put on the screen for us to discuss. And then the second thing is really to look at the goals and policies. And so if you recall, last couple of months I've told you that we put it on hold, and really that's somewhat true. But in these months, staff's been working with the consultant to really kind of continue to draft the document. The putting on the hold part was really holding off on adopting the document, because we wanted to think through some of the things that have been occurring lately or within the last few months in the county as far as potential land uses. And so, but one of the things that we're going to talk about is the goals and policies. And so if you recall, you know, when we started this process, we really said that this is an update. You know, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We're really just taking a look at our current policies and our current plan, current future land use map, to identify if there's any changes that we need to make in general to those. And so the future land use map, if you recall, last month I talked to you about the previous draft that we had. We put rural commercial nodes. I'll get down the legend there. We did space those out into the rural area. And really, this current future land use map pulls them back to the interstate corridor area, which is where we've had those types of land uses since 1971. It was really just a vision of staff and the consultant to say, you know, typically with planning and zoning, it's never hard no. It's here, not here kind of a thing. And so we've always had a lot of people question, it's like, well, if the land's too expensive along the interstate, it's not available, it's not for sale, where could we expand into those areas? And so we drafted something to look at. And then what we've noticed is, if you recall, we did continue to operate the survey on the website. The responses that we received, in addition to the other ones that we've received, is continually, no, we don't want this. We want to keep rural with the rural. You know, and we want to see commercial, industrial focused in the cities and expanding out. And so really, that's kind of the impetus of taking it off of there for discussion purposes. Because at some point in time, we still have to have you guys give a recommendation, and then the Board of Commissioners ultimately has to adopt this update to this document. But I think really what we're seeing, though, and especially in the survey responses as of late, is that the public's really saying is, you know, we want to keep rural density rural, you know. And so they don't want to see, and we've seen it. We've had these occurrences where we've had land uses that are occurring out in the rural area, whether it be a home occupation or whether it be a agriculture-related operation, is that the public's really saying, that's something the noise, the smells, the visual parts of it, we just don't want to see out there. And so we've kind of pulled that back a little bit, but we did add areas to, so specifically this one south of 18, this would be a new one. And then these 2.5 to the south, those would be new at the interchanges. Now, there is some topography challenges with those interchanges, but still, they're more than likely, because of the nodal type areas, they're going to be commercial industrial type developments in those areas. And so I think more importantly, and we'll talk more about this next month, is that, where do you say this changes a lot, is we took out the urban growth expansion areas around the municipalities. And really what we're encouraging the municipalities to do is to request joint jurisdictional planning and zoning. Because through that process, they'll be involved directly in the votes and the planning and the processes that get to there. And it's going to assist the county, it's going to assist the landowners, but that's going to take some time, it's going to take some process. But the way to implement that or to move forward with that would be to do what we're doing with this draft, is to really take that off of the map, those urban expansion areas. And so then again, the predominant land use continues to be A1 agricultural. And then the goal with the goals and the policies, and we'll unveil more of those next month, but it's really just to simplify what we have. We have 14 different goals and policies and those different types of things. And I think it's of the belief that if you can't recite them, are they really goals or policies, And so we want to be more succinct with what those are and go through that process. So and then in saying that, a couple other things we're going to be seeing occurring is we're going to shut the survey off this Friday. So this Friday would be the last time to do it. If you haven't taken it, take the survey. It's valuable information, allows the staff and the consultant to really take a look at what the public wants. Then within the next week or two after that, we're going to replace that on the website with a story map. And a story map is really going to show the public what we've done up to this date, kind of a synopsis of the public hearings, the results of the surveys. But then we're also going to put this on as the story map. And so the public is going to be able to take this draft and they're going to be able to mark it up. They'll be able to make comments on the actual map. So that'll be the first time really that we've allowed the public to engage us in that process. So I'm excited about that because I think, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but really a comprehensive plan is 99% words, things that are kind of, but this is the most important part of the comprehensive plan. It's what we use tonight. It's what we use every night. It's what we use every day as staff. And this is what the public looks at to guide. If I'm going to buy property, or if I'm going to buy property, I'm going to know what my neighbor's doing. I want to know what the county's doing. I want to know what everybody's doing. This is this map right here. This is the future land use map. This tells you where you can invest, and if you invest, what's going to occur around you. So this is a critical document. So again, within the next couple of weeks, we'll put this on as a story map. The public will be able to comment. They'll be able to say, no, we don't want this there, or we want some of this there. This is their time to do that. And hopefully we'll get some good results by the time we meet as a joint group on the 20th of February. By then we'll have almost a month of it to really kind of get some feel into and stuff like that. But so I'm kind of excited about that part of it, And then ultimately, I'm excited to really kind of get into that next phase of this process, which is where I really think we need to go with this, is that, really what we're saying here is we're improving upon what we want for the future land use. You don't want to make too many dramatic changes with this because that does, shift up everything a little bit. But more importantly, and I think even tonight and every day for staff, it's really planning is this part of it, and then there's the zoning, which is this part of it, right? And that affects everything we do, and that affects everything that we say. And so what we need to do is with the next zoning regulations after this is adopted is really under state statute is your zoning is supposed to be in compliance with your comprehensive plan. And so if we achieve that with the new zoning regulations, we won't have some of the issues that we've had today, that we've experienced. So, but beyond that, if you have any questions on that, I'd certainly answer any of that. Otherwise, the 20th, we'll have more of a discussion on it at that time. So,
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Green.
I do, yeah, thank you, Toby. This is a great presentation. I really appreciate the context involved in it. My only, we'll call it a concern, just like tonight, we hear, 600 feet to the west of the boundary line of T, right?
Yeah.
understanding part of this is to encourage these joint jurisdictional areas. Beyond encouragement, like, do we anticipate that the municipalities will take us up on this generally? Do we have a feel for that? Because I would definitely, driving to and from Lennox, you see what the approval that we had for the event center, right? And I think it fits where it's at, everything looks great, but it sure would have been nice to have Lennox as part of that process, right? Do we have a sense of which municipalities may take us up on it, or that some will actually? Or are we anticipating that we'll continue to potentially make decisions, 600 feet from a municipality boundary line? How do you think that conversation is going?
Well, I think the discussion's gradual. I mean, it's never going to be and the big thing ultimately is it's going to take staff time and it's going to take staff commitment, not just from the county, but from the cities as well, and from the elected officials as well, too. Interesting you would point to T is that, T, we do have what I would say is an informal agreement with them. As you were 2 months ago when we had the one where you tabled it, because we do have an informal agreement that they approve all site plans, which works great. I mean, that they're involved in it. So do I think we'll have formal agreements with everyone? No. But do I think we'll engage in informal agreements? Yes. And I think that needs to take place. Do I think taking off the urban expansion areas, I think it makes it better for the communities even if we don't have joint jurisdiction? Because that's what drove us to allow the things to occur in those areas, ultimately. So I think it's going to be positive either way. It'll be less negative with those urban expansions. Because ultimately, when we looked at an urban expansion area staff, we looked at the underlying comprehensive plan. And then we talked with city staff, and if they supported it, and if their comp plan supported it, then we supported it. But really, that went against our policy of saying guide everything to the municipalities, right? So it was a policy that worked in some areas, but what we're seeing is, and you raise a good one with the event center and by Lennox, is that towards the end of that process, we had an issue with sprinklers in the building. And so ultimately, the city ran water to that facility. And that would have been better if we all been involved at the front end of it to go through it, because it was kind of a last minute type of a thing is what I would say. So, yeah, communication, coordination. And we try to do the best we can. We have informal meetings, interdepartmental meetings. We invite all the cities and things like that, but everybody's busy and everyone has to do their things. Where it completely works with Sioux Falls because we're forced. I mean, really, with the joint process, you have to work together.
So by taking the urban expansion areas off, what we're saying is that other than the nodal areas, that is going to be ag land, and basically, generally what it would be then is the city would have to annex it in, somebody would,
Right.
is what we're saying is how we would see growth happening.
Yep. 'Cause not to interrupt, but to build on that comment, I think currently the way it is right now with those city expansion areas, we're trying to read the future and trying to understand things that we don't know about what the city wants to do and how that's going to affect. And if we adopt this plan, we say no. As far as county goes, these are our nodal areas where that can happen. And yeah, if you're 600 feet out of T and you want to build this business, then go work with T and have them annex you and get you on municipality services and so on and so forth. And I think it'd make our job a lot easier then, right? Am I understanding that right, Toby?
Yeah. Well, and I would show you this part here.
Because, and just to finish on that comment, because the other thing that even though it's not really our deal, we end up making approvals based on our comprehensive plan and our rules in the county. And a year later, the city comes along or the municipality comes along, annexes that, and says, well, why in the heck did you guys let that happen? Now it's a big mess for us, right? And I think if we just clean that up, it makes it a ton easier and just say, well, here you go. If you have this piece of property and you want to do this, then work with the city and get annexed.
Well, I think it worked in the previous comprehensive plan because most of the cities only went out, including Sioux Falls, only went out 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
But now every municipality is going out 3 miles.
Right.
And so we would base that urban expansion area on that, right? And so it works in certain instances like the chair mentioned, but, you know, we've had two in Harrisburg, the Pride built on 272nd Highway 11, that we rezoned, we gave a conditional use permit for, but the city won't go through the planning process. Then we had one up on 106 where we rezoned a rural residential, where again, the city won't let them go through the planning process. So we've got blank rezones out there that just can't proceed with it. And I'm not saying anybody's fault on that. I'm just saying that that's the reality of it is. And so if we want to encourage, and I think, you know, and the commissioners have mentioned this, the last rezones that they've had at the level 2 is that, look, state law is a little backwards in this whole deal where it allows these cities to go out 3 miles and do platting jurisdiction. So they have the right for site development, but we're rezoning this property, you know, that's reasonably way outside of their growth areas, beyond our lifetime growth areas. So it does create some complications for landowners and the public in general and some of those things. But the best way for us all to be on the same page would be for us to all be sitting together and making decisions jointly on those things.
Correct.
So, yeah.
And if the municipality doesn't want to do that, then we shouldn't make the decision either, maybe just or we do.
Yeah.
You know, or we make the decision and say, well, you weren't, you know, and then 5 years, if you're upset about it, well, you should have been at the table maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, and we're seeing it now as staff is that City of Sioux Falls is finally getting to some of these developments that were 70s type developments. Well, you got to realize that when we're approving these housing developments, we're approving them as rural developments. The roads, the infrastructure is all rural. And so when the cities get there, not just Sioux Falls, but Harrisburg T and Lennox and all of them, they're going to require it to meet their city standards, which requires a retrofit, which is a complete rebuild of the entire development.
All
Well, those costs are on the homeowner, yeah. And so,
And
you
or
know,
the city, yeah.
and one of the things that we're learning about too is, so they get assessed for those improvements, the road improvements, street lights, curb gutter, all that stuff. But not only that, but they have to retrofit their entire plumbing of their entire house because in septics, we place them out the back of the house. Well, the city services comes in the front of your house.
Sure, never thought about that.
So that's, I mean, it's, you know, it's beyond expensive to do it, you know. And so, and beyond that is, we don't want to stand in the way of really growth of the municipalities accomplishing what they need to accomplish. And we can get in the way of that by allowing development that's premature to what they're really going through.
Sure.
But, and I'm not saying that either, is that we do encourage, I think it works great with Sioux Falls if we have joint jurisdiction with these municipalities and allows us to go through these processes to make sure that everybody's on board with what's being approved and going from there. And again, state law allows you to go up to 6 miles on that too, so, we're open to that, so. So, a little bit of policy
Go ahead,
change,
Mr.
we still
Jungle.
have to work through that stuff and have a big discussion on it, but, yeah.
Commissioner Jungling has a comment.
Yeah, Toby, first of all, thank you and everyone for all your work on this. Like you said, this is monumental for the county as far as what we've been in the past and where we're going. It's been such a long time. I'm glad you got approved for a budget this year and everything can move forward. And also, thank you very much for listening to, I think you're listening to the county, but also listening to what we've been trying to work on the last number of years. The Planning and Zoning Council Commission has expanded from municipals out for all the same reasons you just talked about. It hurts the municipals and it hurts the owners of the house at the current time when they get annexed in. And it overall, just having islands out there is not a good thing for anybody. The ag community, the residents, the cities, anything. So thank you for all that, Toby. Really appreciate that. And I'm really excited about this. And I also encourage all municipals to do a joint commission or the informal agreements or however you want to say it, because we can only do the best we can with this county if we do it together. It's not one against or one making a decision, the other one thinking something different. If we work together, this is going to be great for, again, beyond our lifetime.
Thank you,
Well, and
Commissioner Jungling.
ultimately too is that, and you'll see more of that with the growth projections and things like that, but I mean, we typically grow by 20,000 people every decade, right? And so, but I mean, with the current growth trends and growth trends are interesting because the more you grow, right? I mean,
Right.
it just keeps going up and stuff like that. And so, I mean, the current growth trends, let's just say we're going to grow by 50, and I'm just throwing out a dumb number here, but let's just say we're growing by 50,000 people every decade. Where are those people going to live? Or how are we going to provide services? How are we going to do the things that we need to do? I mean, this isn't just land use planning. This is really looking at everything. Tax base, this is looking at law enforcement. It's looking at all the things that we need to talk about and think about. And so that's what's exciting about planning is, because planning isn't just about land use, it's about how are we going to grow and how do we want to grow, And I think that's the first time that, and again, I mentioned this before, this is the first time in the history of the county that we've really asked the public, the questions that we've asked them. And we've heard back predictable themes, and those, I don't think anything that we haven't heard every month, and the things we deal with. But it's interesting to really see it and to see those comments that people put on the surveys and do these things. And I'm excited about this, putting this story map online too, to have people comment, like, what do they want to see with growth and things like that. But we're starting to see with the amount of growth we've had, and I'll share this with you guys next month, but I mean, we had a record building year, which is amazing, right? Because you would think, well, this isn't a great economy right now. It's a little slow right now. But we had bigger than we've ever had as far as permitting and those different types of things. And I'm going to guess that translates into our municipalities as well, And so this isn't stopping. This is continuing to grow and build, which is great. But we need to manage it in a way that's going to be good for all of us and for the citizens as well, too. And I think that's what we're finally starting to see from the citizens is like, yeah, we like the growth, but we also moved out in these rural areas because we want it to be rural, not because we want it to be a city.
Right.
And so that's a hard thing for us to do is, okay, how do we do that though? And we still have to anticipate we're going to have, 50,000 plus people moving into the county in the next decade or 2 decades, So it's a challenge, but I think it's good. And I've said this before, and I'm not being morbid with it, but this is some of our only shots that some of us will ever get to work on this part of a process, and that kind of a thing, because it is the most important thing we're going to do for Lincoln County at this stage. So, but with that, if you had any more questions, otherwise, one last thing that I didn't put on the agenda, but the County Board of Commissioners did have an appeal. They did uphold the appeal of your decision on the appeal of the digester facility to the south of the county. They did also, last week, they denied the rezone.
Wait a second. They let the digester go through?
Yep,
or-
they upheld your
Yep.
decision, approval of it, sorry. And then they did deny the rezone just to the south of Lake Elvin for the 3 residential lots there. They denied that as well, too, so.
I want to make one comment to that,
Yep.
and this was based on something you said when you were talking earlier, Toby, about landowners, how important this document and this comprehensive plan will be for future landowners and investors to know what they can do with their property. And that's a perfect example where somebody bought a piece of property with one housing eligibility and assumed that they could just rezone it and have more houses. And I think that if we define that better in the comprehensive plan and that when somebody buys a piece of property with one housing eligibility, they're buying a piece of property with one housing eligibility, right? And if they want more, well, then wait till the municipality gets there and let them annex it and have more. And I was glad that got upheld, because I just think you talk about premature development, and I think that's something we have to be so terrible careful of. And to protect the property rights of people that have housing eligibilities. I mean, if we open the floodgates to, well, I have one housing eligibility, I'll just go get it rezoned for rural residential, and then I'll have as many as I want. That's a real sticky slope. So thanks for everything you guys are doing on this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, those are, those
it's gonna
are
be real
challenges though.
interesting.
We had, I think, four rezone applications this year for rural residential that were all denied.
Yeah,
And that's the first time really in the history of Lincoln County. I mean, we always,
so we've done that.
yeah, we've done that. And because those land uses aren't really objectionable, it doesn't, no neighbors really object to those kind of things, but it's really the principle that we're looking at with the building eligibility is that 1995, the county took a big leap when they limited residential development to the 1 per quarter corridor. And I think, you've heard me say this before, but I think it's worth saying again is that in the last 2 to 3 years, we've really seen the impact of what that is, because those costs have just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of money that it costs to buy an eligibility, just the right to build a house is just I mean, it's amazing what they go for, you know?
Well, and the unfortunate part after, you know, like when I was listening to that deal at Lake Elvin, you know, just because of the geography and because of where it's at, why does that entitle that landowner to get 3, 4, 5 more housing eligibilities than it does me at Norway Center? Yeah, you know, I mean, that just isn't, that isn't right. And so I'm glad that that's been our stance, and I think that going forward, it needs to continue, and hopefully the comprehensive plan is identifying that as well, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, the current draft, but I mean, I think there's still some discussion that needs to take place about that. Because I think there is certain areas of the county where we've had a proliferation of rural residential that you know, there's a question or a concern is that can we allow expansion of that? And what does it mean? And what does it do? But you raise an interesting question though, but what about down south? And I mean, you know, a little bit more attractive. It's, you know, it's the terrain and those different types of things too. But
Yeah.
it's definitely going to have an impact on, you know, on growth and development. So.
Yeah, I mean, if some of my neighbors that own land on the backside of Newton Hills all of a sudden want to put a rural residential there, I mean, that's a pretty attractive place, right?
Yeah.
And then how are we gonna handle that?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's not in the growth footprint of northern Lincoln County, but, it would make some sense. Or I shouldn't say it makes sense, but if we're doing it up there, it would make, you know, so.
Yeah, you have to be consistent. You have to be fair to everyone in that process, and that's
Yeah.
why the balance is hard.
So I think
That's
the
why-
hard part is if we open that box up and say, okay, well, this one area, we can, and I know Commissioner Aaron's had brought that up, that, well, maybe we need to circle off this area around Lake Elvin and do something different there. Well, then I guess I'm opposed to that, because then what do you do with the people around Newton Hills, or the people around Lake Lakota, or, you know, I mean, there's other really awesome places in the county too that people, maybe would want to do the same thing, and then we pretty much, then we just open the can of worms and we have this spot thing all over the place again.
But I think we need to have the discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I think, you know, after that too, is the public needs to weigh in on that discussion too and go from there. So,
Sure.
but it's really having, you know, I mean, when you look at the amount of growth we've had, there isn't too many places in Lincoln County that you go to get lost anymore. I mean, there's a house everywhere. I mean, south, west, east.
You can go to Norway Township. There's a spot down there. There isn't a house for about 3 miles. But that's about it.
That's about it. But there isn't too many spots anymore you get lost in Lincoln County.
No,
So.
no.
All right, that's all I had. So
Hey, one last
Yep.
question,
Yep.
and just a request off of me. Could you give the board here just a quick update on where we're at with the carbon pipeline business?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the ad hoc committee did recommend some framework, and so staff then, legal counsel, myself drafted some draft ordinances. It was on last week's agenda, but it'll be on next week's agenda, consideration of those 4. And then and in additional, they could change those. Then the Board of Commissioners, the request is that they would remand them back to the Planning Commission for recommendation. And again, that's state statute that any ordinance that's zoning related has to be recommended by the Planning Commission after a public hearing. But I don't know how that's gonna go as far as if there'll be 1 or 4, or how that'll all work, or none. You know, I don't know where we're at with that part yet, so.
So what you're saying is they could remand all 4 of them back to us and have us pick the one we like the best and send it back to them. That's a possibility.
Well, if they remanded all 4, you'd still have to recommend, or give a recommendation on all 4.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then
So
they,
you wouldn't be picking one or the other.
We'll
Vote on all 4 of them.
all right.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I wanted you to just give everybody an update, so we're all prepared. I mean, within the next few months, there's a high probability that we'll be back in the carbon pipeline discussions, I would guess.
Also, the possibility the state legislature will have done
Correct.
something. I think there's a few bills associated with that.
And also the possibility that the county commissioners might not do anything.
Right.
They might just decide to punt on the whole thing, and, yeah. And one last thing, Toby, we just explain to the rest of the folks here that maybe weren't on the committee or maybe didn't listen to all of it. We just tell them what the current stance in Lincoln County is with carbon pipelines.
Well, I think, one, I appreciate the commissioners creating the forum for that, because I think it allowed us, I learned a lot from the different speakers and communication they had, as well as I'm sure the chair did and Commissioner Sweeter, is, it was good to hear those things. But it was also a forum for staff to really kind of give some analysis that we didn't really do when we met, when we were going through the ordinances that were initiated. And so one of the things that we've talked about is that, if you're going with this new use as far as carbon dioxide pipeline, that's really not accounted for in the current zoning regulations. And so the argument would be is it's not allowed in the A1 because it's not a use that's identified. Now, I say that because legal would still have to weigh in on that part of it, but from our perspective as staff, it's really, when we look at uses, it's either a use is allowed in those zoning districts or it's not. But it would loosely fit under, the I2 district has any other use not herefore defined that's similar to above uses, so it more than likely would require a rezone to those types of uses. But the four ordinances that were developed by the ad hoc committee, staff drafted, the first one would be a permissive use to 330 feet. So, and it would be a 330 foot setback from a dwelling, structure, CAFO. I'm missing a couple things there. But that would be a true hard setback. So it can only be waived with the landowner waiver, which, what I pointed out to the ad hoc committee is that's very similar to a CAFO. So if someone submits an application for a CAFO that doesn't meet the setbacks, I can't present it to you unless they have the waiver in hand. The county can't override a landowner's waiver. The second one would be a permitted special use, 330-foot setback. That can be flipped to a conditional use permit, and the planning commission could override a landowner setback. I said that repeatedly at the ad hoc committee that I don't think the public understood that, and that's very similar to what the ordinances that you considered and recommended. So those not being a hard setback, the board could override the setback and take it down to 0 feet, potentially. And I don't think the public understood that. The third one would be a straight conditional use permit with no standards, a non-standard conditional use permit. Very similar to what tonight was. Motor vehicle sales, we don't have, it's a conditional use, but there's no specific performance standards. That would be something that I hope we work on with the new zoning regulations, that we establish, standards for each type of a use. And the fourth would be a rezone to an I1. So it wouldn't be allowed in the IE1, it would have to be rezoned to an I1 light industrial district. So four very different types of ordinances, but one very similar to what the other ones were, other than the distance. The ones that were initiated by the citizens, so.
Yep.
But that'll be taken up next week at the Board of Commissioners, so.
But thanks for explaining that, because that was, I think that was one of the most interesting things that came out of the whole ad hoc deal was that currently it's not a use. And so if we just left everything the same, how it is right now, and they for whatever, if somebody started building the pipeline, it's not a permitted use in the A1 district, and we'd have issues, right? I mean, obviously it'd be legal issues, but I think that was, Toby and State's Attorney DeGroot did a lot of work on that, and I think that was something that was interesting to everybody that we hadn't really thought about before. So appreciate all your work on that, Toby. Thanks for the explanation. And anything else?
No, I talked way longer than I wanted to. So.
Yeah, you need to get home.
Thank you.
All right, very good. All right, with that, guys, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, meeting's adjourned.